Look, I know 2023 was a long time ago and no one even really cares about it anymore. I'm very late with this video, I know, but I had to make it because 2023 was such a great year for anime. Better late than never, right? I plan to rank all the anime I watched from winter 2023 to fall 2023, unlike the Anime Awards, which always exclude the fall season for some reason. There are 18 different anime I watched this year, but before we dive on in, we need to talk about the honorable mentions. The second season of Star Wars Visions was very different from the first since it technically wasn't an anime. Instead of being animated solely by Japanese animation studios, these short stories were animated by different studios from all over the world. It wasn't as talked about as the first season since Japanese animation is what's popular right now. That being said, I still enjoyed it. Like the first season, some stories were better than others, but my personal favorite was The Spy Dancer. I believe if you're gonna watch anything from this season, that should definitely be the one you check out. If you are interested in a more in-depth ranking and analysis of these short stories, let me know in the comment section below and I will consider making a video discussing this season. The next and final honorable mention I had to talk about will be One Piece. While One Piece didn't start in 2023 was an amazing year for One Piece in general. We got an amazing live action that I made a whole 1 hour long review on, some amazing developments in the manga, and of course, we got Gear 5 animated in the anime. Even if all these cool things didn't happen this year, One Piece would get an honorable mention anyway since it's still my favorite anime and manga. So you can expect more One Piece honorable mentions in future yearly anime ranking videos. But with that out of the way, it's finally time to get into ranking all of the anime I've watched this year from worst to best, starting with Liar Liar. I picked this anime up because I heard it was similar to No Game No Life, an anime I very much enjoyed and would love for it to get a second season. However, this anime didn't even come close to living up to the expectations set by No Game No Life. Liar Liar is about a high school student with below average intelligence, Hiroto Shinohara.
I probably wouldn't be at the bottom, but I definitely wouldn't be at the top. Out of 100 million, I'm betting I'd stand around 90 millionth place.
Who transfers to a school where everyone's rankings is determined by games. When you win lots of games, you get stars, and the highest ranking one can achieve is 7 stars. Through a series of accidents, he defeats the highest ranked person on campus and gains the ability to lie about his ranking. He claims to be a 7-star and the best at games in the world, but because of his below average intelligence, he has to cheat to maintain this lie. The premise of this anime was very interesting because it's all about lies stacked on top of more lies, and I haven't even scratched the surface to how many lies Hiroto was trying to conceal. The main aspect of this show that ruined it was the existence of this secret company that would help Hiroto cheat in these games. They barely explained how they helped him cheat, and we didn't get to see most of the games he played nor how the company helped him.
I'll do whatever it takes to win. I will be the strongest.
Way to go, Hiro!
It all happened off screen, so there was no excitement to many of the games. In the games we did get to see more in depth, the company's cheats somehow didn't work, so Hiroto had to outsmart people smarter than him to win. It didn't make much sense, and it quickly became a chore to watch.
Because Academy Island's top-ranked position belongs to me. But of course, that was all a lie.
Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer returned for a second season in 2023 despite the controversy surrounding the first episode. Goblin Slayer has never been good. Its first episode was very dark and showed brutal violence, but it was mostly used for shock factor. While a lot of those elements still existed moving forward, nothing was as graphic nor as horrifying as the first episode. There was not anything interesting about the plot, but the main thing that kept me coming back each week was to see how Goblin Slayer would end up killing goblins, because it was often done in cool and unique ways. Demon Slayer. We got the third season of Demon Slayer in 2023, the Swordsmith Village arc, and it unfortunately didn't live up to the expectations set by the past 2 seasons. The first season was consistently blowing my mind with amazing animation. Then at episode 19, I saw what I thought at the time was the peak of Demon Slayer's animation. Then the Entertainment District arc proved me wrong by constantly increasing the quality of its animation with each episode. So maybe my expectations for this season were a little too high, since I was expecting Demon Slayer to impress me with its animation once again, but that's not quite what happened. It was unfortunately a major downgrade, and no, I'm not talking about the CGI fish monsters. It didn't look too bad, but just compared to the first 2 seasons, it was kind of mid. Not to mention, I wasn't really invested in this storyline. With each week, it felt like I was only watching the series because I had already spent much of my time watching the first 2 Demon Slayer seasons. Eden's Zero. I watched the second season of Eden Zero in 2023 and it was kind of a disappointment. While the first season wasn't the best, there were a lot of elements I enjoyed from it. However, this season felt like it had more bad than good, which is why it's so far down on this list. I'm still confused by Shiki's strength since manipulating gravity should make him very overpowered. If he can make anything weightless and multiply the weight behind his punches, he should be much more powerful than he was portrayed in this show. Also, the power system was very unclear since they referred to ether gear as a technology, but they used it in the show like it is magic by doing things like bathing in ether to unlock powers instead of modifying their bodies in some way. Also, the world, or I guess the universe building, has been very lackluster. I enjoyed seeing things like the chronophages from the last season because it felt like a unique natural disaster to exist in space. This season, we got a tsunami in space, which felt very dumb. I really did enjoy some parts of this season though, like Shiki and the whole crew losing to Dragon Joe. It was a very dark scene that shocked me and got me interested in the story again. Also, Rebecca's Cat Leaper ability was very cool and the repercussions of it were interesting to follow. Like, was Ziggy coming back partly Rebecca's fault? Because there were some changes that probably led to him reviving from the dead after Rebecca used her abilities to save everyone. I'll most likely watch the next season if there is another one because I'm invested in these mysteries, but this show has definitely let me down in many areas. Spy Family. I've complained about Spy Family so many times before. I've mostly had issues with Yor's lack of relevance to the main plot and with the filler that halts the progression of the story. While this season still did have some of those issues, it was handled so much better, which is a shame since this season wasn't as popular as the last one. We saw some of Yor's assassin work during the Cruise Adventure arc, which I thought was very cool since it led to some character development for her. There's still so much I like to know about Yor, and I hope we continue to get more focus on her in future seasons. However, this season still did have a bit of a filler problem by having a bunch of different side stories that didn't add much to the overall narrative, nor lead to much character development. The last episode was literally an anime original, which is another word for filler. But despite that, I was still able to find many aspects of this show fun and interesting. Nier Automata. I chose to watch this anime in the winter season of 2023 because it was based on a popular video game. I knew that most video game adaptations tend to be bad, but with recent video game adaptations like Cyberpunk Edgerunners and The Last of Us, I was very excited to give this adaptation a chance. Unfortunately, while there was a lot to love about this show, it was overall a bit underwhelming. This may be because I never played the game, and this anime was probably meant to be watched by people who could understand the game references. The plot was also a bit hard to follow because it felt like we were just thrust into this world with very little explanation. Also, the delays and the CGI used at the beginning definitely didn't help with the quality. However, once I got the vibe of it, the show was very interesting and I was able to enjoy the better parts of it, like the action scenes and the moral questions that these characters had to deal with. I still really want to play the game at some point, so hopefully I will get to that soon.
It would fall out of my hair.
Bleach. I'm not gonna lie, I've never been the biggest Bleach fan. Of all the big three, it would probably be ranked the lowest. I dropped the anime at least 3 times due to filler and was only able to completely finish it on my 4th watch. That being said, it's not like I hate Bleach because I was excited to see it was coming back to animate the last arc. The first core was amazing and it captured my attention almost immediately. If I was ranking that part for this video, it would probably be much higher on this list. However, this second core just wasn't as interesting. There were some amazing moments, such as the Kenpachi fight and the battles involving the Royal Guard, especially Otetsu. However, I unfortunately found most of this core to be a bit of a bore as it was mostly just waiting for Ichigo. When he finally arrived, things got hype again, but the hype died very quickly since he had to travel back to the Soul King's palace. I'm still excited to see how the 1000-Year Blood War is going to end, but this core definitely missed the mark for me. Black Clover. Sword of the Wizard King was one of the 2 anime movies I watched in 2023. I know many people have their own feelings and opinions on Black Clover, but I personally have always loved it, and so I was very excited to see this movie. While it didn't have the best story, the action and animation was non-stop and spectacular. It felt like there was barely any room for story with how frequently the action was occurring in this movie. It's not like the story was bad or anything, but it felt a tad incomplete. While I enjoyed the villain, understood his goals, and even empathized with his motivation, his character felt incomplete. He was a mirror of Asta in a way since they both had to work hard to get to the positions they were in. I love stories where the protagonist looks at the antagonist and just sees a reflection of themselves. Overall, it was a good movie, but it could have done better with some of the story details. Undead Unluck. This anime got off to a very rough start. The premise was interesting with a girl who kills everyone she touches pairing up with an immortal dude who just really wants to die. This immortal dude, Andy, used his undead ability in so many unique ways, like cutting off his legs and regenerating his blood so he can propel himself through the sky, and regenerating his blood in his finger so it fires like a bullet. I always enjoy seeing people use their powers in unique ways because it demonstrates that both the character and the creator of the manga put a lot of thought into how these powers work. That being said, the beginning of this anime was very bland. It was simultaneously interesting and boring because it didn't offer a captivating narrative. But after both Andy and Fuko, the unlucky girl, joined the Union's roundtable, things got way more exciting. Uncovering the mystery surrounding Andy's past and this world brought my enjoyment of the show to a higher level, and I can't wait to see what's in store for the next season. Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. This anime was really something special. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you watch at least the first couple of episodes because it's an experience. Zom 100 is about a man who worked at a very exploitative company. He ends up hating his life and feeling empty inside, but everything changes for him when the zombie apocalypse starts. I loved watching him realize that he didn't have to go to work anymore. He was so focused on his work that when the apocalypse started, his first thought was that he would be late. Then once he realized that the end of civilization meant freedom for him, the anime changes from black and white to color as a representation of his mental state, somewhat similar to The Wizard of Oz, because from his perspective, the freedom the apocalypse brought was beautiful. Another thing I loved about this show so much was the parallels between the main character Akira and other apocalypse survivors. Akira just valued his freedom, and so he made a bucket list of 100 things he wanted to do before becoming a zombie. However, there were other people who mostly cared about their survival, and so they would create a list filled with 100 things to do to avoid becoming a zombie. This was only one of the parallels to the main character, but this show is filled with so many other, much more creative ones as well. The main reason this anime was so far down on this list was the delays. By the time the full thing was finished, I just wasn't as interested in it anymore. Nevertheless, this anime was very fun, and I unfortunately don't have enough time to go over all the aspects I loved about it. I didn't even get to talk about my favorite character. Hell's Paradise. I really enjoyed this anime, especially the introduction. Demonstrating different techniques used for execution quickly conveyed both the strength of the protagonist and the type of brutality we would see in this anime. It had an interesting protagonist, plot, side characters, and fights. But the reason it is so low on this list is because there's nothing about Hell's Paradise that stands out to me. It's just another really good action and adventure shonen. And there's nothing wrong with that. I definitely can't wait for the second season because we left on a bit of a cliffhanger, and maybe it will do something that makes this anime stand out a bit more.
I feel nothing. I am Gabimaru the Hollow.
Suzume. At first, I wasn't gonna make the time to see this movie. I love the last couple of Makoto Shinkai movies, but I heard from friends and people on the internet that this movie wasn't worth watching, so I didn't see it when it was originally released. Suzume technically came out in the fall season of 2022, but I didn't see it until it was re-released in theaters. In April, I think. I can't remember the exact date, but it was well into 2023, which makes it somewhat okay for it to be in this video. The main reason I decided to give it a chance was because the trailers for it were quite moving, and I fell in love with the soundtrack that was often used in the TikToks I watched. The biggest thing I took away from this movie was of all the Makoto Shinkai films I saw, this one felt the most like a Ghibli movie, which is crazy to me since I still haven't watched the actual Ghibli movie that came out in 2023. I promise I'm getting around to it, I just need it to come to streaming or something. But anyways, I can't put my finger on exactly why this one felt more like Ghibli than the others. Maybe it was the fantasy elements, or maybe it was because this movie had more adventure. Either way, it was amazing, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check it out at your earliest convenience. Oshinoko. The first episode of Oshinoko was an experience. They spoiled us with an 82-minute episode which gave me plenty of time to get invested in the characters and the story. I actually low-key wanted more anime to start having longer first episodes, or maybe just longer episodes in general, but that's a topic for another day. If you haven't watched this anime yet, I highly recommend you check out that first episode because it blew my mind, and apparently the minds of everyone who watched it because it was trending on Twitter at the time. The rest of the show was pretty good too. It wouldn't have gotten this high up on this list if the rest of the show was crap. But nothing in the following episodes would be as shocking as the first. I feel like I can't say much about this anime without spoiling it, but what I will say is that it was a very interesting exploration into the beautiful and dark sides of the idol industry. The The Apothecary Diaries. This was one of the anime that genuinely surprised me in 2023. I never expected to be watching an anime about solving medical mysteries set in Imperial China, but here we are. I honestly don't know where to even start with this anime. The protagonist, Mao Mao, has quickly become one of my favorite anime characters of all time. She's very funny, smart, and not to mention, petty. She refused to make more money working at the palace because she didn't want her kidnappers to make more money off of her than they already had, even though getting promotions would probably improve her quality of life as well. And although she is very smart, she constantly doubts and second guesses herself, which is so relatable. She also has moments where she becomes an absolute badass, like in episode 4. Mao Mao was the heart of the show, and Jinchi was great too, I guess.
そうか。
Mushoku Tensei. I made a couple of videos on Mushoku Tensei in the past, so if you've seen them, then you would know that despite the weird elements, I have been really enjoying this fantasy. This season focused more on Rudeus's issues with his man parts, which was not a direction I thought we were going to be taking this show. I just hope that all of the character development doesn't come undone now that he has cured his ED. While I enjoyed this whole arc, the university got pretty boring at times. I enjoyed the plot threads, but I missed the adventure in watching Rudeus have to strategize to get out of tough situations. Nevertheless, I thoroughly enjoyed this part of season 2, and I can't wait to start watching the second part this year.
しかし、そんなことより。
Attack on Titan. Okay, we are in the top 3 now, so things are getting serious. I have been following Attack on Titan for a long time, not as long as fans who have been watching since season 1, but I caught up around season 3, way before the final season was even announced. Then the final season being split into multiple parts was a little frustrating, but in 2023 we finally got Attack on Titan. Final season, the final chapters, parts 1 and 2, and it didn't disappoint. The exploration of Eren's motives for committing genocide were a little wonky, but the ending was overall well done. I loved how Ymir could see herself in Mikasa, and I loved seeing how the cycles of war continued long after everyone died. While I believe world peace is a goal we should all be working towards, at the end of the day, it is an ideal. I personally don't like when media tries to simplify world peace and other ideals by pretending it is something that can be easily obtained. I don't want to beat around the bush, so I'll just come out and say it. Attack on Titan succeeded where Naruto failed. The world's problems all revolved around one guy who was manipulating everything from the shadows, so once he was defeated, world peace was achieved. Sorry to all the Naruto fans for calling out your show like that, because this isn't the only example of simplifying an ideal. On the top of my head, I know Wonder Woman was a culprit of this as well. My problem with that kind of writing is it felt like there was no message I could walk away with. In Attack on Titan, the message was very clear. As long as people continue to hate each other because of their bloodlines or differences, violence will never end. Jujutsu Kaisen. Where do I even start with this anime? Sometime in 2022, I got sick, so I decided it would be a good time to watch Jujutsu Kaisen, since everyone was talking about how good it was. I fell in love with the animation, cool abilities, and the wacky characters. And although there was some controversy regarding the treatment of the animators, this season, especially the Shibuya arc, was still able to expand on everything I loved about the first. This season was filled with so much action, and they were all interesting fights. Usually, when there is an action-heavy arc with different fights happening simultaneously, I tend to get bored of at least one of the fights because I'm most interested in the main battle as it is the most plot relevant. But every battle in this season was important because everyone was trying to achieve the same objective. Save Gojo. They were just split into different groups. All of the battles had high tension as well because we never knew which characters would actually make it out of this arc alive. Would I be glazing if I said Jujutsu Kaisen had the best action scenes of 2023? Because...
天上天下唯我独尊。
同じ道を選んだそれだけだったはずなのにいつの間にかどうして方法を伝う
Frieren. This was an anime I decided to watch on a whim. Every season, I try to watch about 5 anime, and this was the last anime I picked for the 2023 season. That means I picked Goblin Slayer 2, Spy Family Season 2, Undead Unluck, and The Apothecary Diaries, all before Frieren. If you told me this anime would end up being my favorite of 2023, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are. The top anime on this list is Frieren. But why? What set this anime apart? What made it better than both Attack on Titan and Jujutsu Kaisen? Well, it's kind of hard to explain, but I'll try my best. I'm not much of a slice of life kind of guy. If you watched this video all the way through, then you may have noticed there was no slice of life anime, unless you count Spy Family as a slice of life, but I don't. My tolerance for those type of shows are very low because it always feels like there is no urgency to reach a big goal. I often find myself asking, what was the purpose of this story? Because it usually feels so aimless. But for some reason, Frieren, which definitely felt aimless at the beginning, was able to hook me. Everything fascinated me because it was a slice of life in a fantasy world. Taking extra time to do random side quests before a main objective was even established was interesting to me because we got to explore a world that could only exist in my dreams. It only worked because the creator put so much time into the world building. We got to learn neat facts about magic and certain spells from the side quests Frieren and her party would go on. For example, we learned that in order for Frieren to use her spell that creates a field of flowers, she must have seen the flowers she's attempting to create at least once. And don't even get me started on the lore behind the demons. It was so good because it made them naturally evil without actually making them evil. I could go so much further in depth on this show, so if that's a video you are interested in, please let me know in the comments below. But before I move on, I just needed to mention how much I loved that magic was treated like science. As I mentioned earlier, there are conditions behind all spells, and magic is a continuously evolving study. Something that was really powerful and dangerous in the past can be something that is used commonly in the present.
アウラ自害しろ
2023 was an amazing year for anime. I didn't know if I was going to make this video because by the time it comes out, everyone will have already moved on from 2023. However, the push I got to make this video came from the people who pushed that subscribe button because I recently hit 500 subscribers. So I guess you could say this video is a little reward for hitting that goal. If you have watched this video all the way up to this point and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider it. I make a lot of reviews and other anime related discussion videos. I am on the road to 1,000 subscribers and you can be part of it. Also, I want to interact with my viewers more, so let me know about your favorite anime from 2023 and about other anime I missed out on in the comment section below. With that being said, this has been the Hot Rodster, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.